I am here with my friend and coworker, Courtney Koenig, and we're in a series called Choose Your Hard, and we're going to talk to Courtney about one of the things in her life that probably wouldn't have changed without Jesus. And so why don't you tell us just a little bit of background about yourself?
Well, I tell a lot of people that I was the country club queen who got moved to the country. So the first 20 years of my life, I have wonderful folks, and I have one younger sister, and we lived part of the time in Texas, part of the time in Kansas. And I, for most intensive purposes, was a pretty well-to-do private school kid. Got to participate in all the golf and the tennis and the things that come with that kind of lifestyle. And I love my family, and I had a really great childhood. I met my husband at Koenig, which is a Christian sports camp right outside of Branson. And I can remember we always laugh about how somebody had said when I was there were all these other college guys there working, and, none of them really had a clue what they wanted to do. And somebody said, "Oh, that guy over there, yeah, he's got like 3 jobs." And I was like, "Hey, hello." Come to find out, he's a homeschool kid from Oklahoma. And I used to drive up and down Interstate 35 and swear I would never live in Oklahoma, but we all know what happens when you say never.
Yes, God has different plans.
So anyway, we met, and it was a quick, I was pretty sure he jokes about how I said, "God told me that summer that you were the one." And he always jokes and says, "Well, honey, God told a lot of girls that summer I was the one." I was like, "Well, that's cute, babe." But I was right. So anyway, we got married in 2006. And it was a true kind of Green Acres moment, because I moved out to the country with no club, with a bunch of goats, and just a very different lifestyle. I was probably not prepared or ready for all of the change. And truthfully, I was just really immature and selfish. I was 22. And for most of my life, it was, life is about how awesome I was and all the things I could do and was going to do. And then you get married, and, all of the glitter and the glam. I don't think we even made it through our honeymoon without a nice knockdown drag out. So I get tickled when couples come back, and I just kind of grin. I'm like, "How was it?" So all that to say, I'm married to Seth Koenig, for those of you who don't know, and he is still one of the best men that I have ever met in my life. He is an amazing man, husband, and dad. However, we are very different. We were raised differently. We are wired quite differently. However, we are both very intense in our own respects. So you can imagine that probably was going to make for some intensive conflict, which neither one of us had a clue how to handle at 22 and 25.
So now we're scratching the surface of your hard. So in a sentence, what was your hard? What is your hard?
I think I walked into marriage believing a lot of the lie of culture that this was supposed to make me happy. And I was not happy. Often, and I expected him to make me happy.
Okay.
And when I did not feel that way, I tended to aggress, and he would retreat, and he didn't want to, he was more conflict avoidant, and I was definitely a conflict aggressor. Surprise, surprise. Which did not work well. They were really, really unhealthy conflict cycles, and we didn't really have any older couples around us. We were kind of the first of our friends to get married, so we really didn't have anybody to watch or to go, "Hey, are you dealing with this?
Yeah, help."
Yeah, is this supposed to be like this? So
that you get these markers, I will call them, early on. honeymoon had a fight, and but it progresses. Tell me how bad it got for you from your perspective.
Well, it got pretty bad multiple times. It was, I would say, rocky at the beginning in a lot of normal ways for couples before kids, where you just have unrealistic expectations of each other. And when those aren't met, you're frustrated and you just tend to react in the only way you know how, which often is not helpful or healthy. So, in those moments when things are rough, like every brilliant person, you decide, well, we can fix this by having a baby. So we got pregnant with Liam, and I had him in 2009. And again, I didn't really have anything to compare it to. So after I had him, I had really bad postpartum depression. And I didn't know to call it that. I didn't realize.
You know what you were going through.
Yeah. And neither did he. And he didn't really know how to help me. And like most guys who love and want to help their wife, if they don't know how, they're kind of like, I don't know what to do here. And I felt super frustrated and abandoned. And Liam was not the easiest baby right out of the gate. And I was just not healthy. I was not mentally healthy. I was struggling emotionally, and I would get extremely angry, just at life, at my son, at Seth, when things were hard, because I just didn't know how to cope well.
Your default emotion was anger.
Right. And the hard part was I really didn't realize how much damage that was doing in my marriage and with my son. Fast forward about 2.5 years later, Barrett was born in 2012. And that was a little bit easier because I think he was a better sleeper, and come to find out now, sleep and I have a very sensitive system. So it's very important that it gets rest, not too much caffeine, which is why we don't give me Red Bull, or coffee even. But that was a little bit easier, but it was still pretty rocky. I'm sure if you ask Seth, he still felt like we were really in the trench. We still didn't know how to communicate when things felt stressful. And the same cycle really still existed. And the more he retreated, the more I felt abandoned and angry, and would have enough meltdowns. There are multiple times where I've told him I'm so thankful for his mom, because if she had not been right down the road.
You told me a story once, and I don't know if you remember this or not, about getting in your car and like, I'm gone.
So that would be, if we want to take it up to the point of real change. Through having young kids, there were several times where I went and did counseling, and that was really helpful. That was the first time to really start to work through and kind of identify some of the postpartum stuff, some of the things that weren't normal, because I didn't know how to address those. But when Barrett was little, because we have a disease called I like to complicate my life, which I think other people have as well, we decided in this lovely house we lived in that we should list it and sell it. And I think often one of the lies is, especially as like a young married with kids, if you can change your circumstances, you think it's going to make everything better.
So the saying that goes with that is your problems are not around you, they're in you.
I didn't know that, Rick. So we listed the house, we sold it in 8 days, and we finished out a little barn dominium before that was a thing. And we finished it out in 55 days, and we moved in. And I now had 3 boys under the age of 6 in a very small 1-bedroom area with a whole bunch of red mud outside. And we decided to start a new school. There were so many things that we chose to do that really were so far beyond what I needed at that point and what I was capable of handling well and healthfully. And we just kept going and kept going and kept going until things had gotten so bad. It wasn't just, both of us won out, because we had been through a couple of those cycles before.
Right.
But this was like, we almost felt like it was embarrassing, because on the outside, often I think people look at Seth and I and think, gosh, they've got it together. Like, look at all they have, and look at their cute kids and their families and so on and so forth. But on the inside, at home, it was awful. It was a mess. It was so
I think that's true in more cases than you
and
realize.
difficult.
Yeah, it's very
and
true.
I wish somebody had said that. I wish somebody had said, like, man, like, this isn't normal, and it can be different.
So you're doing this for the 2012 Courtney, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. At some point, we decided we were going to build a house next to this barn, and I was frustrated in so many respects, feeling stuck at home with little kids, trying to get out and do some design stuff. He's building his business. He's really good at it. I feel like I was also one of those women that was not great with little kids. I felt like I was supposed to be. I felt like that was, the typical female is supposed to be overjoyed at every new birth and adore every single coo and dirty diaper. And I did not like that. And so I felt like something was wrong with me all the time. And I was just angry. I felt so frustrated at so many things. And I kept thinking if we changed certain things in life, it would make me happy. And I would be able to handle things, and then I would be the wife and the mom that I wanted to be. That's a lie. So we got to a place where it was sometime in September or maybe late August. The kids are still little, and he had taken me to go to the Civic Center to see Hamilton. And that night, it all kind of came apart.
On date night.
On date night. It went from, oh, I'm so glad, to, oh my goodness, like, I hope no one ever sees this part of my life. So after the show was over, he had made some comment, because I had said something about how, I really wanted to do that, and I could have, because I had wanted at some point to pursue, right, like many
Broadway.
20-year-old girls wanting to be on Broadway. And I'd chosen to have a family.
Unrealized dreams.
Yeah, unrealized dreams. And he had made a comment that wasn't terribly supportive, and I lost it. I lost it. Driving down the road, I'm so thankful we are not in like a really small neighborhood. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Someone would have called the cops. It was ugly. Horrible words exchanged, screaming, getting out of the car, trying to walk home in the dark. Just about as bad as it can get, just shy of getting horribly physical.
Okay.
So at that point, I was done. It was bad enough for both of us. I packed up, and early that next morning, without telling anybody, I drove to my sister's in Kansas City, and I left. I could not stand to be anywhere around anymore. And during that time, it was a couple of days. It wasn't a long time. But I had enough time to kind of sit, and I went to several coffee shops and would read my Bible or start to journal and just work through what happened.
Okay, so we're going to turn a corner there. I want to know what it is about your walk with Jesus that helped you handle your hard.
I think, and I've told a lot of our young adults this, Jesus had been my Savior for a long time, but there were still a lot of areas of my life that he was not my Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I had not
True for all of
submitted
us.
that area. And this anger was an area I had not submitted. I had rationalized. I had said, he'll forgive me, and then I'd do it again. And it wasn't until we got to a place where I saw the horrible damage to my relationships that this was doing that I said, I can't do this anymore. And at that point, Seth had basically called our counselor that we'd seen together and talked to her, and he wouldn't talk to me. Like I'd written an apology letter, or I'd sent him messages, I'd tried to call, and he had her call for him and said, here's the deal. There's some stipulations for you to come home. And I was like, huh? And so I can still tell you the parking spot space across from Chick-fil-A where I sat in my car after I drove home and was just totally broken. I had done a lot of work trying to get help mentally. I had tried to get help emotionally, but spiritually, I really hadn't ever hit that broken place where I submitted and said, I surrender. I'm done. I'm done doing this my way because it doesn't work. And it hurts the people that I care the most about. So at that point, I wasn't entirely sure that Seth was going to stay married to me, or that I was going to, what it would look like with a relationship with my kids. And I remember sitting in that parking spot, and the Lord goes, listen, he said, I'm not going to promise you that I'll restore these things you want. Will you follow me even if I don't?
Wow.
And I said, where else do I have to go?
Right.
So anyway, suffice it to say, I'm a little bit stubborn because it generally takes getting to those places, unfortunately.
For a lot of us, it does.
Yeah.
It's not just you. I mean, that's why we're doing this.
Because I want other people to know, yeah.
I was telling someone just a moment ago, evidence of healing is when you share your story to help others.
Yeah.
When you're free, right? So I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Does it ever raise its ugly head again?
Yes, it does.
And I want our people to know that.
It's not, I was not overnight an entirely different person.
There was a marked
change. There was a marked change spiritually in that submission area. And I knew personally, like there was newfound freedom there. Now the practice of that working itself out and overcoming those cycles that you've created,
right?
That's hard work.
That is
hard
work. And one of the messages in this series is this is a lot harder than I thought it'd be.
Yeah.
And it is. First message, burn the ship. That was your moment in the parking lot. I burned this freaking ship down. I am not going back. Yeah. But then there's 100. Dadgum, this is so hard. Yeah. It's a lot harder to follow Jesus than I thought. While we're doing this is we want people to see there's some things in our lives that just don't change without Jesus. And you're the backside of that story, right? You're the full circle of that. And I appreciate so much you sharing it with us.
Well, I just hope everybody knows that everybody has a story. Nobody's perfect, and we're all in process. And the idea is that we walk together following him because he's already laid out for us what things need to look like. And usually we make it more complicated than it needs to be. But humility is a big part of my story. So
thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Thank you much.